Hello and welcome to Sim Radio here on the Sisters in Music Network. It's Monday Music Madness and you're tuned into Mixing It with Nicki Kris. This is Nicki, and in case you don't know anything about me, I'm a singer-songwriter from Raleigh, North Carolina. My show celebrates women and men in the music and entertainment industry, providing an avenue for them to showcase their talents. Our motto, Sisters in Music, together we are stronger. My guest today is a Canadian singer-songwriter and prolific recording artist. Going by the stage name The Sun Harmonic, he released his fifth studio album, Coast to Coast, in 2021. A collection of folk songs recorded in 5 studios all across Canada. He has self-produced music from his home recording studio since 2009, drawing attention from SiriusXM, CBS Radio, Canadian Musician Magazine, and Canada's Walk of Fame. 2 new studio albums are underway, 1 solo LP and a full length with his rock band. Please join me in welcoming the awesome Caleb Heichel. Welcome to Mixin' It, Caleb. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good, Nicki. Thanks so much for having me with Sisters in Music. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. It's going to be a pleasure to share everyone with you, and we are going to get right to it. How would you describe your music? Is there anything that is unique or perhaps least uncommon about it?
You know what? I would say from my experience of living a life full of musician friends and songwriter pals here and there that I've met all across the country, every songwriter that I know is unique in their own way. And I would say that more about my friends than myself, just because I'm so in awe of the talent that I've met and that I've been able to play shows with and go on tour with and be in the studio with. But that's one of the most beautiful things about being an independent songwriter, especially being independent, is that you can be unique as you want to be without having anyone tell you what genre you should be recording or what artist name you should be releasing things under. You kind of just have as much artistic freedom as you need or as you want in your life. And so if anything, I would just say that I'm as unique as everyone else in my pool, that I really love the openness and willingness that you find in the studio to create exactly what it is that you want and to release it to people in a fashion that you're happy with.
I love that. And I love the fact that you touched on being an independent artist and how there really are no boundaries, because I actually think that is one of the hugest benefits of remaining independent. I often question people when I talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, I want to get signed by a label. I want to do this and I'm like, well, why? What do you feel that it's going to, besides money, okay, right? You know, it's going to, maybe they'll throw some money behind you with that, but creative-wise, you're stifling yourself, I think.
Yeah, and I've found myself over the years being able to take right and left turns, very, very sharp turns, to go off and do different projects that don't necessarily make sense in as far as following a direct path that steers directly towards, say, being a popular artist in the sense of pop music, the definition of pop music, that you kind of continue to make the same song over and over and over again strategically. And I've found that it's just so freeing to be able to decide to instead of making a folk or a rock record, you go, okay, well, I'm gonna try and make a classical recording. I'm gonna try and make a soul kind of retro throwback R&B album. It is just one of the best parts of being able to kind of be your own boss. It's entrepreneurial in a way, right? as every independent artist is an entrepreneur.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're exactly correct. I mean, I'm doing the same thing, as an independent artist myself. I mean, yes, I generally do release in the rock and pop space, but I'm also dabbling in different other genres as well, just because I can. And I love it.
Yep.
Absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about your new album, Coast to Coast. Tell us how that came about.
It started as a very small idea, but quite an ambitious effort right from the get-go. I had been planning a tour to go out west, out to Vancouver Island, which would take me all the way to the furthest west Pacific coast of our country that I had never been before, for one, and that I knew that while I was out there, I should take advantage of the opportunity to capture something rather than just playing shows, which I was playing some solo folk shows in Whistler and Vancouver and on Vancouver Island in Victoria. And so I drove up to Comox Valley to Dove Studios and had prepared 3 songs to record. One of them actually was written the night before I recorded it. It was a bit of an idea that I had, kind of going out west to write a song about a particular friend's baby daughter. And when I was out there, luckily inspiration struck, and I was able to actually write the song in full on guitar and vocals and lyrics, and put that together just in time to record it at the studio. And then the other 2 songs were some older kind of personal favorites of mine that I brought out. And so I started recording the record there, the first 3 songs of the record, and had the idea of kind of recording it chronologically. So I thought, okay, I'm out west, and I'll begin the album with these 3 songs, and then as I move across the country and go back home to Toronto, and then continue to travel whenever that may be, to go out all the way to the East Coast and be able to put my foot in the Atlantic Ocean and then and see it all through. And so that was in 2015, and I had planned to go out east at the end of that year. And as a complete surprise and unknowingly to me, when I got back from that trip, I ended up just dealing with a lot of other stuff that had nothing to do with music, some health issues and injury with my wrist and a number of things that made me cancel all of my plans entirely. I never gave up on the idea of finishing the album. It was just became a huge question mark. I had no idea when I was going to be able to go and travel to the Go East, when I was going to be able to actually physically even be able to go back into the studio, and when and how that was going to happen. It was up in the air for a few years. And by the time things turned around in 2018, I was actually able to book not a tour this time, where I wouldn't be performing live, except for singing on the train. But I took the train out to all the way out to Halifax and back with my partner Jess, and we stopped into a number of studios to finish an initial idea that I had of the album, being that I would record a song in Toronto and then go out to Ottawa, Montreal, and Halifax. And that's the way that the album is laid out as of now, is that it moves chronologically across the country. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go any further north this time around. It's something that I would love to do, but I wasn't able to reach any of the territories. But it does go from Vancouver Island out to Halifax and then back to a live recording here in Toronto. And so it only took me 6 years to see it through, but it really was just based on that simple idea of what could I do with songs, original songs, and different recording studios. If I just showed up to a
But I
studio,
love that.
Well, just having no idea what would happen almost was really the fire that I set underneath myself to to just be surprised and to see what happened. And there's a number of things with different songs and recordings that happened that wouldn't have happened if I had chosen to record them all here at home.
Yeah, and the last song you mentioned, you actually recorded it live on stage. Is it Massey Hall? Is that what it's called?
Massey Hall.
Massey Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Massey.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. How was that? Because that must be, like, really unique.
It was the best 4 minutes on stage I'll ever have. It was completely just on a whim and wasn't necessarily planned or meant to happen. I am just so lucky that I brought a Zoom condenser portable microphone with me, and I set it on the stage and pressed record. And I really did nothing else to the recording other than just a simple EQ and mastering it, really. There's nothing else. So all the reverb that you hear is natural. It is the way that room sounds, and it's why it's lauded as the best music venue in the city. I think it's the best music venue in the world. But it was incredible. And that's an example of again a song that I only wrote just a couple of weeks before I performed it on stage at Massey, and it was a song that I wrote for the venue as it was closing for renovations in 2018. And so when I started the record, that song would have never, ever come to mind or even been an idea or a thought that I would ever be able to have the opportunity to write that song, sing it on that stage and record it and put it at the end of the album. But it almost kind of became the bookend of that period of time in my life. And I thought that it only made sense to go from a song that was recorded in Halifax, and rather than ending the album in Halifax, it's almost like I documented the process of coming home and singing at a venue that means so much to me.
Oh, that's awesome. Really, 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 really awesome. And this is actually a really good spot for us to share one of the songs that you brought with you for our listeners to check out. And I do believe this happens to be one of the favorites off of the Coast to Coast album. Could you tell us a little bit about the song Ocean?
Sure. I alluded to it before. When I was out in Vancouver Island, I was staying at my friend Alien Bell's place in Cumberland, right outside of Victoria, and I was there for a couple of days. And her daughter had, I don't even know if she had turned 1 yet. She was around there, and her name is Lila. Her middle name is Ocean, and it was the first time that I had seen her. And Ellen was an old dear friend of mine who moved out west, and so it only made sense that when I was out on Vancouver Island that I would not only play a show in Victoria, but that I would see Alien and stay with her for a few days and get prepared to go out to the studio. And so I had this idea of the chorus being Lila Ocean, you are my potion, just like a simple use of using her first and middle name and a rhyming scheme that it had that bouncing around in my head a little bit while I was out there. And while I was making my way out to Vancouver Island, I thought, that it would be really cute and cool if I could write the song. I don't know if I'll be able to. And so the day before the studio, I remember going for a walk with Elian, and Lila was being pushed in a crib. And we brought her home to the crib. And Elian said, "Can you go and put her to bed and lie her down? And I'm going to go run out and grab something." So I had a few minutes where I was able to put her to bed and sit quietly with her and make sure that she fell asleep. And so I grabbed my lyric book and wrote the verses and the chorus and wrote the full song out with a melody in my head. I didn't want to wake her up, so I didn't have the guitar. And I just wrote the melody and the words of the first verse, chorus, second verse, chorus. And once she was asleep, I went over into the living room and kind of just figured out the guitar part that was already anticipated by the melody, and practiced it enough and made a demo of it the next morning, and practiced it enough that I thought, okay, I can attempt to record this in the studio. Even though the song's barely 24 hours old, I will try and record this song as best I can in the studio that I'm going to in about an hour. The only demo I have of that song is me playing it on the couch in Cumberland, and I say, hey, I gotta go. I'm packing up to go to the studio right now. Let's see how this goes. And I performed it better than I probably should have. I was really happy with the guitar part, and I sang the song right there in the studio as well. And so it's almost like I had no time to edit or revise anything about the song. It happened. It was a beautiful moment. I really remember everything about it, writing it, the feeling of it, and the way everything felt and looked. And so I recorded it in the studio that day and thought, okay, we'll see how this goes. And really, I didn't add much more to it other than some light strings. I was trying to go for kind of a Simon and Garfunkel production where I really just kind of kept it to harmonies and acoustic guitar. And from there, was surprised to find out that a lot of people say that this is their favorite song on the album. It really surprised me because at some point I thought, oh, it's this song, because I didn't get to do as much with it as I would have usually wanted to do. I thought, oh, is this song boring, or is it too slow, or whatever it is? And most people came back to me and said, I love it, which is just those kind of surprises when you don't anticipate a song to be someone's favorite. It's the best thing you could ask for.
I completely agree. And as a songwriter myself, I've always found that the songs that appear just almost out of nowhere in unique moments and opportunities are usually the ones that your audience gravitates towards, to where you may feel, this was written in 10 minutes. It sounds great. I'm just going to put it on the album. We'll see what happens. And then those are the ones that people gravitate towards because they are so natural. So I know everyone is going to love this. I actually think it is one of the most beautiful songs that I have heard. And we're going to play it for everyone. You're welcome so much. And we're going to throw it on. So this is Ocean by the Sun Harmonic.
Nestled away on an island that sits on the west coast of Canada, there lives a girl with a mother that means all the world to her when she smiles. Lila's her name, and the ocean is found in between all of her sunny days. Paradise lay on the coast of the bay. Mother Nature, she whispers her name. Lila Ocean, you are my potion for making me feel much better for now. Lila, you look at me with those blue eyes, and day, where I drove through the hills, searching for this small town. Love can be found, and as I look around, all the sights and the sounds, they call out her name. My ocean, you are my potion for making me feel much better for now. Lila, you look at me with those blue eyes, and I'm safe and sound.
Again, Caleb, absolutely beautiful song, and I love the Simon and Garfunkel vibe, like you said, that you were going for. That's a great, great comparison because it does give that feeling of Simon and Garfunkel, and they are absolutely one of my favorites that I grew up listening to and hearing their music, and the epitome of what I would call, like, you know, classical, like folk music. If you do, right, Simon and Garfunkel vibe. So I love that, and it's a great comparison.
Thank you. I also think it's the closest that I'll ever get to writing a James Taylor-esque guitar part.
Yes, that's another good comparison. Definitely.
Yep. Where the guitar
Very
part
good.
almost kind of sings on its own. It kind of has a vocal quality to it, just because the melody is in there, anyways. But yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised at how that song came about.
So you mentioned Simon and Garfunkel, that you were trying to kind of get that vibe with this song, and now you've also mentioned James Taylor. Who are some of your main musical influences? I could probably venture to guess that maybe the two of them might be, but do you have any others that you draw inspiration from?
Absolutely. I wouldn't say that I necessarily have much of a top three or a top five. It's always changing. I mean, there are bands that I was a fan of in high school, in my really hard rock kind of screamo days, when I was doing a band like that myself, and certain bands of that era that are still making music, and so if I had to say what's your favorite band in the world, anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely love the band Thrice, and Dustin Kenstrew is just kind of like the guy that I want to be as I get older in my life. And but other than that, I mean, I'm sitting here in my what used to be my old bedroom at the townhouse, my place with kind of it's got a basement recording studio, and then the rest of the house is full of instruments and everything. But upstairs, in this room, is my collection of CDs. All of my vinyl is downstairs, but my CD collection is, I'm looking at it, I don't know, 200 CDs or more, and it ranges everywhere from having a whole shelf of classical CDs, which was my first love when I was just a child. Under the age of 10, I was playing classical music, and I absolutely love the Romantic era of the Debussy and the Chopin and the Ravel, and Beethoven is my just go-to for inspiration. Just I have a T-shirt with his face on it. But I moved from there to loving. I moved from there to loving 30s and 40s jazz. I can sing every single word of a Billie Holiday CD, it was even a cassette tape that I had in an old Volkswagen Golf that had a cassette player. And there's a definitive collection that I had on cassette tape that I listened to 1,000 times, and I could sing every word of it. And so vocally, I've found myself singing along to and learning, taking vocal lessons almost from that kind of era of 30s, 40s jazz and the 60s, 70s folk era of, trying to sing along and emulate the falsetto kind of work of solo Paul Simon and the guitar work of that era. I mean, I'm a kid of the 90s. I love Radiohead and Nirvana just as much as everybody else who started playing guitar and learning Green Day songs. And so all of that kind of grunge and pop punk and hard rock, all of that is infused in me and my songwriting. It's not a short answer. I'm sorry, but it really is just so varied.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's really, really great because it does show, all the different musical influences. And it's funny because I can relate to a lot of the musical influences that you listen to. I also listen to a lot of like the current music, but I find that I'm more inspired by, the older artists than I am, few exceptions, because I do have some very, more recent artists that I listen to more than anything. But it's great.
Music,
it's great.
Yeah, I mean the classic rock and the folk eras and everything. I mean those songs at this point they're almost like American standards in a way. They're like kind of like comparable to lullabies or something like that. Some of these songs where like everyone knows those songs. They've heard them in movies and commercials and at parties and in bars and everything. Like you know them like the back of your hand. You can sing along and maybe not even know who the artist is, but you can sing every word. and so that just has such a deep rooted impact in us, in our culture.
Yes, it certainly does. One of the questions that I do ask all of my songwriters is, do you have any songwriting tips or tricks that you would care to share with our listeners?
That's a good question. First thing I would say is that you should definitely try not to write songs in the same way or in the same fashion every time. Meaning, try and write the lyrics first. Try and write the melody in your head, like sing it first and write the lyrics first, and then write a guitar part to that melody, or vice versa. Make sure that you also try and only write a guitar part without even thinking of the vocals first. I've found myself trying to do that, and I write on guitar and piano, and so I found myself kind of going about it that way with both instruments. But actually, the very first thing that came to mind when you asked that I've never forgotten is kind of how to get out of if you're kind of stuck in a pickle with lyrics for the second verse. Like any songwriter who's listening to this would probably right away go, the second verse is cursed, because the first verse always comes to mind. You can write the whole thing straight from the heart, and then you get to the chorus and everything is amazing, and then you try and get to the second verse and stumble a lot of the time with exactly what to say. It almost feels, it literally is secondary to the first verse, and so it can be the most challenging part. I find myself sometimes to do that. Sometimes it just flows and there's no worry, but if you're stuck, an example of something that I tried once that worked very well was for a song of mine called As I Go Away that I wrote on piano for my winter album. This song I had So say there were 4 lines in the second verse. I tried to write the first 2 lines, and I did, and then I could not write the third and the fourth. It just didn't work. It did not flow. I could not find a way to flow out of those 2 lines into the third and the fourth. And so after beating myself up over it for a while, I just thought, why don't I move those 2 lines? Like maybe those 2 lines are the end. Maybe that's where I should find myself at the end of the verse. So I just moved those 2 lines to the third and the fourth line, and I was able to write before that and kind of prelude those 2 lines. I think I was able to do that within, half an hour or something like that. Like it came to me very easily after that. And so that's, I don't know, maybe my best little tip and trick that I could share off the top of my head. But there would be so many others if I really thought through it.
No, but that actually is a great one, and I totally agree. Second verse is usually the hardest for me too, and I think that's just indicative of songwriting. I think you usually start spewing, and then it's just, at least for me anyway, because I'm a binge writer, but I usually get to the point where I'm like, okay, darn it, now I've got to come up with a second verse that matches with the first verse. I'm actually doing that right now with the song that I'm working on, and I have written the second verse, I think, 20 different ways to Sunday.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, great tip. So switching gears a little bit before we take a partner in podcasting break, tell us about some of your side projects, because you're like a hard rock lead vocalist. I think this year you're also celebrating your 10-year anniversary of your retro soul and blues album by the Broadview Band called Love Is Gone Away. You love classical piano. I know you've even recorded some classical pieces. What's going on with some of your side projects?
Well, most of the ones that you had mentioned are some of my favorite artistic ventures that I've taken. I've steered myself towards really just focusing on the Sun Harmonic and the material and the output in the last few years, but the soul and blues album really was just, it was such a random idea, and somehow I followed it through to the end of making it a full-length album under a completely different name. And a lot of people that I've met have said that that's probably one of their favorite things I've ever done in it, and I take no offense to that at all. I think it was because I just had fun with it, and it was so unexpected for that to come along, and that I fulfilled it through all the way to just leaving it as it is, giving it a different name and a different vibe, and calling it for what it is, really just a throwback, retro, Motown-esque type of record. I was trying to channel my inner Otis Redding and my upbeat Temptations influences. That's a whole crate in my record collection is just that soul and blues, and I was really proud to do that. And so, moving on from that side project, I had always for so many years, because I came out of this hard rock background, for so many years I always really wanted to really scream into a mic and kind of do my old screamo rock and roll kind of grunge phase. I wanted to participate in something like that, and so then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, a project comes along where I'm able to do that and be the lead vocalist and frontman of a rock and roll band, and so that's called King Snake Crawl, and that was so fun and so exhilarating to be able to perform those vocals and produce and mix the record too. And so I kind of find myself now almost trying to, having channeled and siphoned all of those genres and influences off into actual side projects with different names, I really find myself now almost trying to incorporate those genres and those inspirations into what I'm doing on kind of a song-by-song basis with the Sun Harmonic. I would say that there are some songs on new records of mine that I'm working on that slow down and have that soul kind of vibe and influence, and that I'll channel the production and steer the production of the songs in that direction, as well as the hard rock. I feel like I'll never really be able to shed that part of me because my first band almost 20 years ago now was called Far From Freedom, and in 2004, 2005 we were releasing really, really loud, screaming rock and roll records, and I found myself, I'm not a teenager anymore, and now in my 30s I found myself really, really finding a need to be able to still express myself that way, and to be able to turn a song that I've written, say for example one that we'll be releasing somewhat soon, called Glory Days. I wrote it as a folk song on acoustic guitar, and somehow me and my bandmates turned it into probably the most like rock and roll, four to the floor recording that I've made in a really long time, and I'm really, really excited to share it with people. And we're working on our own album with Dave and Ian, my bandmates. We're working on our own record, and we'll either release that under the Sun Harmonic or maybe even under a new band name. That's kind of to be continued. We're not sure, but we're working on our own record here that just has such varied influences. One song is kind of an upbeat, like almost a kind of old, like Elvis Presley kind of rock and roll bluegrass kind of song. There's some others that are. There's another that's kind of closer to like almost like a Black Sabbath kind of like slow, sludgy metal song. And there's two ballads at the end of the record. One called Slow Dance, and another kind of acoustic jam that ends the record. And then the rest of the album is just rock and roll. And when I compare that side by side to the solo album that I'm working on, that's completely different in its message and direction. They're all folk songs, very, very, very quiet folk songs that have, as I'm working on them, have kind of made me tear up and get goosebumps and go off in the other direction. They're not really meant to make you dance. They're meant to make you sit down and listen and make a tea or pour a whiskey and listen in. And so I guess that really is just kind of where I'm at right now, at least, is like trying to see how many genres I can put on one album without it not making any sense to people. It's a lot of fun.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun, and I'm actually really excited to go and check out. I did not have a chance to do it before we met today, but I'm excited to go and check out your blues album, because I'm actually going to be working on a contemporary blues album next year. Great. So I'm really excited, which is something outside of my normal genre, that I tend to focus in. And it's mainly because I worked on a project where I did contemporary blues, and it was like, you know what, I could really have some fun with this. I think I could really take this to a new level. So it's great. I love hearing other independent artists and other songwriters just saying, you know what, I want to explore different aspects of musical creation and want to work with different people to express myself. And I think it's fantastic. So awesome. So this is a great place for us to take a quick short break from a word from one of our partners in podcasting. This is the awesome Chatting with Nat. We'll be right back on Mixing It with Nicki Kris here on the Sim Radio.
Chatting with Nat is a podcast for independent women seeking to speak their truth and to break down barriers. We host honest conversations that help to guide and empower women. Speak your truth and set yourself free. Let your voice be heard.
And we're back on Mixing It with Nicki Kris on the Sim Radio Network. And my guest, Caleb Heichel, otherwise known as the Sun Harmonic.
Hello.
Caleb, you alluded to working on new music, a new folk album. Before we get to the second song that you brought with you to share with everyone, I know that the album is being recorded in like a beautiful old church that's been converted into a recording studio. How is that going? How's the album coming along? When can we expect that?
That record is going to be a very special one, and I have I've kind of put it aside, to be honest, just to be able to finish a few of the band songs from our other album. So I've been spending a lot more time doing the rock and roll kind of side of things with the band's material, and we've got a song that I've now kind of handed off, and I will be trying to kind of steer my my studio time later in the summer and into the fall, especially towards this folk album out of, which was recorded out of Catherine North Studios, is the name of the church, converted church studio. It's in Hamilton. And I had actually visited that studio when I was 19 years old, and I was actually recording my very first album as the Sun Harmonic. And I did a session there and had not gone back to visit that studio for 13 years. And so at the end of last year, in the fall, I booked a session knowing that it was going to be a very, very, very kind of emotional and surreal experience to go back to that studio as so much older and perhaps maybe a little bit wiser, and just with different songs and all of this experience that I had. And I was in that studio for 2 days. The very first day I showed up, and I don't believe that I left the room for like 11 hours. Like I didn't even go outside. I didn't see the sun except it coming through the windows, which in that studio is, because it's an old church, there are these very, very tall stained glass windows. So during the day, the sun's coming through there, and it's just so beautiful and like so cool. And so I honestly, I just got into the room and started recording. I didn't even leave the room until like 10:30 at night. And then I stayed over in town, got a hotel, and was able to use that room to change the strings on my guitar, and woke up the next day and just headed right back to the studio and sat behind the drum kit and continued to record. So I laid the foundation of the album over those 2 days. I got, I believe, 11 songs on acoustic guitar, and then was actually able to lay down a whole bunch of drum tracks where I was playing like a 1950s drum kit. It was the coolest thing. And some piano and some electric guitar, and I was able to really put down some overdubs that I wasn't expecting to have the time to do. And so when to expect it is a good question. I would say that I'm probably going to release 1 or 2 singles from that album before the end of this year, and release the full-length record by maybe the spring or summer of next year. I want to make sure that the singles that I have in mind are released quite soon, and so I think I'm going back to that studio in September to record lead vocals for a few of those songs to be able to move them forward faster than the rest of the album. My plan was always to start the album there and then to finish the album there. So to go back with fully instrumentation of all of these songs that I had been recorded back in my home studio in Toronto, and to bring that back into the church studio and to sit behind a microphone and belt these songs out or sing them very quiet and softly, and to be able to actually perform the songs in the room where they started really was my intention, and I can't wait to see it through. It's just such a special place to be, and these songs mean a lot to me. They all tell stories. Every single song is either about telling a story about myself or a memory, or telling stories about other people. And so it's going to be a very personal album that hopefully brings a tear to other people's eyes other than just myself.
Well, we can't wait for that, and you'll have to keep us in the loop when that comes out so we can get you back on, and maybe we'll do a track-by-track overview of that one. So very exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Looking forward to that. So great spot for us to share the second song that you brought with you. I know that this one has a special meaning. I want to make sure that we do get it on before we run out of time, but I would like you to just give us like a quick elevator pitch as to what this song is about, because it does have special meaning to you. So tell us about Spend This Life With Me.
So this song was written for Jess. And the best thing that's ever happened with this song was the opportunity to actually be able to sing it for each other, kind of as a duet in the studio in Halifax. So we got all the way out to Halifax off the train, living in like a room that was far too small. Like you could barely even move around in these cabins that take you all the way out to Halifax from Ontario. And we got all the way out there and found ourselves in this old 1800s attic. The song is sung from my perspective or my point of view, but I wanted Jess to sing it with me as a way to really just like, we're not harmonizing, we're kind of singing the exact same melody all the way through, right? Just as a true duet. And we set up microphones in this studio to sing it to each other. And there's all of these moments where we allude to Massey Hall, where we met, and all of these different little moments here and there throughout the early part of our relationship. And I really love listening to it again, and just putting myself right back in that place. And I hope that everyone else enjoys this song too.
Excellent. Well, we are going to play this rewind. This is Spend This Life With Me by the Sun Harmonic.
That's where I'll be if you will spend this life with me. Where will we go? Your coat spread around ashes today. Now man's nature walk is another man's grave. Beside the park is the home where they stay. It's where they found love in the air each day. I met you walking down the aisle. I fell to my knees and I said I do, first time in a while. And then I could feel the earth tilt to my side. These flowers were fake, but the words were real. They made you cry. Wherever you go, that's where I'll be. If you will spend this life with me, where will we go? She held my hand as it began to rain. As day turned to night, I started to feel my luck change. This beautiful girl defines my most beautiful days. And I'll pour you some wine, passing the time. Here's what I will say. Wherever you go, that's where I'll stay. you a song. It's better this way. Wherever you go, that's where I'll be. If you will spend this life with me, where will we go? That's where I'll be. If you will spend this life with me, where will we go? Wherever you go, that's where I'll be. If you will spend this life with me, where will we go?
That is an absolute beautiful tribute to each other and your relationship. I loved listening to it as well, and I can certainly understand why you also love listening to it. And it's great that you can write a song and then have the person that you're writing that song for perform with you. So it's an absolutely beautiful creation.
Thank you. There's even, if you listen closely, there's even a kind of field recording that we did standing at the very edge of Cape Breton, kind of standing at almost the edge of a cliff, singing the song a cappella, and you can hear the birds and the waves of the Atlantic Ocean in the background. And luckily I was able to capture that just by recording it on my phone, I think, or on this portable mic that I was carrying around, and put that into the recording as well, so that it kind of captures like the furthest that the album reaches all the way out to the East Coast.
Oh, awesome. I'm going to go back and listen to that again because I didn't catch that originally. So
I think awesome. It's at the very it's at the very beginning, and then it comes back in the instrumental. Yeah.
Good little sneak, little like what do they call them?
An Easter egg.
Nugget, little nugget.
Yeah.
Easter egg, yes, that's the term. There's a little Easter egg in there for you guys, so go make sure you listen. If you didn't catch it, go back. All right, anything else before we sign off? Anything that you would like to share with our listeners, perhaps? Where can they find you on social media so that they can keep up to date on all of these awesome projects that you're going to be releasing?
Everything, all across socials. Luckily, I was able to just get simply the tag of @TheSunHarmonic, and that's the best and the one and only place to find exactly what I'm up to at this moment. I have a Bandcamp page that has lots and lots of music. Some of it now is kind of backstage in a more of a subscription portal, which starts at a very small, reasonable price to access something like 20 or so exclusive kind of private, like live albums and demos and stuff like that. So that's a really good way if you want to dive even further beyond kind of what's public. But there's lots to enjoy on all the streaming services and everything too. And if you love vinyl, I've got a few of my latest records that are pressed onto wax. And so that's kind of my most proud moment artistically, is being a vinyl lover myself, to be able to have that and to offer that to people really just is the ultimate for me. And other than that, I mean, we've talked about some of the new projects that are coming, and I really hope that I'm able to start to share singles and little snippets of what's going on with those records very soon, and that people are able to catch that when they come out in the next couple months, I would say.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't wait for all of the new music, and I'm sure that after listening to the 2 songs I shared today, that everyone is going to be excited to hear some of the other projects as well. So, Caleb, I would love to thank you right now for being on the show with me today, taking the time to chat with me and sharing your music and your inspirations. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for Mixing It. You are quite welcome. And on behalf of everyone here at Sim Radio, this is Nicki Kris. Until next time, keep on mixing it.